Sword Art Online has the worst fanbase of all time, and that is not an exaggeration. I have made plenty of videos criticizing the Sword Art Online fans for their endless need to defend the series, and every time the reaction is the same. Instead of proving me wrong, they prove my point. They show up in force, repeat the same excuses, and act shocked that people are still criticizing a show they insist no one dislikes anymore. Since making those videos calling out the Sword Art Online fans, several more defenses have popped up. Not fewer, not quieter, more. Each one arrives as proof of the exact behavior being criticized. Instead of disproving anything, they reinforce it. These responses are not coincidences. They are reactions. The moment the fans are called out for being unable to let criticism go, they respond by doing exactly that. Every new defense only adds another example to the pile and makes the pattern impossible to deny. This is the exact opposite of not defending Sword Art Online. If the fans truly wanted to stop defending it so badly, then the defenses would not keep popping up nonstop. Silence would be the end of it. Instead, every criticism is met with another excuse, another response, another attempt to control the narrative. You cannot claim you are above the discourse while constantly jumping into it. The sheer volume of defenses proves the point all by itself. People who genuinely do not care do not feel the need to respond over and over again. They move on. Sword Art Online fans do the opposite. They swarm, they explain, they justify, and then they pretend none of that counts as defending the show. If there were no defenses, there would be nothing to point at, but the defenses keep coming because they cannot help themselves. As long as that continues, the claim that they are not defending the series is meaningless. Their actions contradict their words every single time. At this point, the fanbase itself has become the strongest argument against the series. The constant defensiveness, the lack of self-awareness, and the refusal to let criticism exist make everything surrounding the show worse. The fans insist the show does not need defending, yet the moment any criticism shows up, they rush in to do exactly that every time. They cannot help themselves. It is automatic, reflexive, almost funny. If the series truly did not need defending, then they would not be this desperate to protect it. They would let the criticism exist and move on. Instead, every complaint turns into a personal offense, as if pointing out flaws is some kind of attack that must be shut down immediately. Sword Art Online fans do not practice what they preach. They tell others to ignore criticism, stop responding, and move on. They claim that engaging with the haters only makes things worse and gives critics more attention or legitimacy. Then they do the exact opposite. They respond to everything, argue with everyone, and keep the conversation alive themselves. The advice only applies to other people. When it comes to their own behavior, all those rules suddenly disappear. Sword Art Online fans love to think they are being noble. They frame themselves as the voice of reason, telling others not to defend the show because it only makes things worse. They present this as advice, like they are trying to help the community and calm things down. Then they immediately turn around and do the exact thing they warned against. They defend the series just as hard, just as loudly, and just as desperately. The difference is that they convince themselves their defense is justified while everyone else is the problem. If they actually believed their own advice, then they would follow it first. Maybe instead of lecturing others, they should start by fixing their own behavior. Sword Art Online fans cannot move on. They have to defend this show because they have tied their entire identity to it. Criticizing the series feels like criticizing them personally, so they react the only way they know how. They argue, they deflect, and they rewrite reality to make the show look better than it is. This is not about enjoying a piece of media anymore. It is about protecting a version of themselves that depends on this anime being good. Letting the criticism stand would mean admitting they invested too much in something flawed, and that is something they refuse to do. So they keep fighting, not for the show, but for their own ego. It is honestly sad and pathetic how the Sword Art of Online fans base their entire personality on this show. It is not just something they enjoy. It becomes the core of how they see themselves and how they interact with others. Any criticism of the series feels like a direct threat to their identity. When a piece of media reaches that point, discussion becomes impossible. There is no room for distance, self-awareness, or perspective. Everything turns into defense mode because letting the show be flawed would mean admitting that they built too much of themselves around it. And instead of stepping back, they double down and cling to it even harder. Sword Art Online fans always try to act tough. They pretend the hate does not bother them and claim they can easily ignore it. They like to frame themselves as above the criticism, unshaken and confident. That image falls apart the moment someone says anything negative about the show. Reality proves the opposite. They cannot stay quiet. They cannot let it go. They feel the need to jump in, correct the record, and defend the series every single time. The tougher they try to look, the faster they rush to prove that the criticism hit exactly where it hurts. Sword Art Online fans are the opposite of tough. They are some of the most insecure and whiny people you will ever see in an anime fandom. They crumble at the smallest amount of criticism and immediately jump into defense mode like everything is on the line. This constant need to respond, explain, and justify is not strength. It is fragility. The louder they complain about being attacked, the clearer it becomes that they cannot handle disagreement at all. The funniest part is that Sword Art Online fans insist there is no visible hate for the series anymore and that everyone loves it now. According to them, the backlash is gone and the criticism is imaginary. The show is apparently accepted, respected, and beyond dispute. If that is actually true, then what are you people defending against? Why is there a constant need to argue, explain, and correct anyone who disagrees? You do not defend something that is universally loved. You defend something you know is still being questioned. Their behavior contradicts their own claims, and that contradiction is impossible to ignore. Do you see people making 3-hour-long rebuttal videos defending the Lord of the Rings trilogy? No, exactly. That is because genuinely well-regarded work does not need constant protection. It stands on its own without an army of people rushing in to explain why it is secretly good. If Sword Art Online were actually that strong, it would not require this level of non-stop damage control. There would be no endless defenses, no walls of excuses, and no marathon rebuttals aimed at silencing criticism. The sheer volume of these defenses says more than any argument ever could. And if there is no visible hate for the series anymore, then where are you people finding all this hate to respond to? If everyone loves the show now, there should be nothing left to argue against. No constant outrage. No endless rebuttals. No need to keep bringing it up. Yet the defenses never stop, which means the hate you claim does not exist somehow keeps appearing on its own. Either the backlash is still very real, or you are actively searching for criticism just so you can argue with it. Either way, the story you tell does not line up with how you act. I made a video talking about everything great about Sword Art Online. That video is literally 0 seconds long because there's nothing great to talk about, not a moment, not a single word. There was nothing worth praising, so the video ended before it could even begin. If there is truly no visible hate for the series anymore, then these defense videos should not exist either, or they should also be 0 seconds long. You do not need hours of explanation to protect something that is universally loved. The fact that these long videos keep getting made only proves that the criticism is still alive, no matter how hard the fans pretend otherwise. And why are the Sword Art Online fans constantly complaining about all the hate? You cannot complain about something that does not exist. You cannot be exhausted by backlash that is supposedly gone. So what is really happening here? Either the hate is still very real, or the fans are imagining it, exaggerating it, or actively hunting it down just so they have something to be angry about. None of those options make them look good. If the criticism is actually gone, their outrage makes no sense. And if it is not gone, then all their claims about universal love fall apart instantly. Sword Art Online fans keep contradicting themselves. They insist there is no visible hate for the show anymore, but in the same breath they cry about how overhated it is. Both of those things cannot be true at the same time. Either the hate is everywhere and crushing the series, or it does not exist. You do not get to switch between those claims depending on what sounds better in the moment. That flip-flopping just exposes how shaky their arguments really are. Sword Art Online cannot be both at the same time. It cannot be a flawless masterpiece that everyone supposedly loves, and also an overhated, misunderstood gem that nobody appreciates. Those ideas directly cancel each other out. A show that everyone loves does not need excuses, pity, or constant defending. And a show that is truly great does not spend its entire life being framed as a victim. Fans keep trying to have it both ways because the truth is uncomfortable, so they juggle contradictions instead of facing reality. The Sword Art Online fanbase is built on lies and hypocrisy. Whenever other people defend the show, these fans demand that they stop. They claim that defending it is pointless and only gives critics more attention. According to them, anyone who argues in favor of the series is just beating a dead horse and making things worse. Then they turn around and do the exact same thing. They flood comment sections with defenses, explanations, and excuses, all while insisting that defense is unnecessary. The rules only apply when someone else is doing it. When they do it, suddenly it is justified, important, and misunderstood. That contradiction sits at the center of the fanbase, and no amount of denial changes it. If defending Sword Art Online were really just beating a dead horse and truly pointless, then the obvious question is why the fans cannot stop doing it. They keep defending it because on some level, they know it is bad. This is not ignorance. Ignorance would at least imply they do not understand the criticism. They understand it perfectly. That is why it bothers them so much. This is pure insecurity. They see the flaws, they hear the arguments, and instead of accepting reality and moving on, they panic and rush to smother every criticism they can find. They pretend defending the show is useless, yet they pour endless time and energy into doing exactly that. You do not obsessively protect something you are confident in. You protect something you are afraid cannot stand on its own. It becomes a full-on chicken and egg problem. Did the hate spark the defenses, or did the nonstop defending invite even more hate? At this point, it barely matters, because the cycle feeds itself. The fans obsess over every scrap of criticism, rush in to correct it, and in doing so amplify it far more than any hater ever could. Without the defenders constantly dredging it back up, a lot of the criticism would have faded on its own. Instead, they keep reviving it, reposting it, responding to it, and acting shocked that it will not die. The irony is that the very people claiming they want the hate to end are the ones keeping it on life support. Sword Art Online fans love to say that rebuttal content is nothing positive for the series. They claim it does not help, does not improve its image, and does not change anything. According to them, rebuttals are pointless and unnecessary. So if that is really the case, then why do they keep making more of it? Why keep producing response after response if it supposedly achieves nothing? People do not pour time and effort into something they truly believe is useless. The only reason these videos keep coming is because the fans feel compelled to make them. Their words say one thing, but their actions say something completely different. And that contradiction exposes the truth they refuse to admit. The cognitive dissonance is off the charts. If rebuttal content is really as useless and harmful as they claim, then they would not keep making more of it. People do not repeatedly invest time, effort, and energy into something they genuinely believe has no value. Yet they cannot stop. They complain about rebuttals while producing them nonstop. They criticize the very behavior they rely on. That contradiction exposes the truth. On some level, they know these defenses matter to them, even if they pretend otherwise. Saying rebuttals are bad is just a way to save face. Making them anyway proves they do not actually believe that at all. The endless defenses only prove one thing. The hate is working. It is getting under their skin, and they cannot handle it. If it truly did not matter, there would be silence. Instead, there is a constant stream of excuses, rebuttals, and damage control. That reaction alone says everything. They feel the need to defend the show nonstop because the criticism hits too close to home. It shakes their confidence and threatens the image they desperately want to protect. The more they insist it does not bother them, the more obvious it becomes that it does. People do not rush to defend something this aggressively unless it feels under attack in a way they cannot ignore. The hate is effective because it exposes cracks they would rather pretend do not exist. It challenges the idea that the show is untouchable, and they cannot stand that. So they respond again and again, thinking that if they just argue enough, the criticism will go away. It never does. At this point, the defenses are not a sign of strength. They are a sign of desperation. The hate is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, and the nonstop reactions only confirm how powerful it really is. The fans love to paint themselves as the heroes of the story, bravely defending the show from criticism, but the hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. They act morally superior for doing the exact thing they mock and shame others for. When someone else defends the series, suddenly it is cringe, desperate, or making the fandom look bad. But when they do it, it is noble, justified, and necessary. In their minds, the rules only apply to everyone else. What makes it worse is that this self-appointed hero complex comes with a constant need to talk down to others. Anyone who does not follow their exact script is treated like an embarrassment or a liability, even though they are all doing the same thing, rushing to protect a show that supposedly does not need protection. It is not about principle or consistency, it is about ego. They want to be seen as the right kind of fan, the enlightened one, while still indulging in the same defensive behavior they claim to despise. It would not surprise me at all if Sword Art Online fans were creating the hate themselves on alternate accounts, just so they could switch back to their main accounts and argue against it. That way, they get to play the hero and pretend they are bravely standing up to criticism they secretly caused. It is the same trick Mysterio pulls in Spider-Man Far From Home. He invents fake threats, stages huge attacks, and then shows up to stop them so people will praise him. None of it is about helping anyone. It is all about attention, validation, and control of the story. Sword Art Online fans are constantly fighting battles that nobody asked for. They rush in to argue, explain, and justify even when no one directly challenged them. What makes it worse is the hypocrisy. They tell others not to defend the show, to ignore the hate, to rise above it, and then immediately turn around and do the exact opposite themselves. They cannot help jumping into every discussion, every criticism, every joke, as if it is their personal responsibility to correct the record. The irony is impossible to miss. The very behavior they claim to be above is the same behavior they engage in nonstop. They preach silence while making noise, and they preach indifference while obsessively responding. If they truly believed defending the show was pointless, they would stop. But they never do. Instead, they insert themselves into conflicts that did not need to exist in the first place, creating the drama they pretend to be tired of. In the end, they are not victims of constant attacks. They are volunteers in arguments they refuse to walk away from. What makes it truly pathetic is how fake and hollow the whole thing is. Instead of actually enjoying the show or accepting that not everyone will like it, the fans feel the need to manufacture conflict just to feel important. That is not confidence in a series. That is insecurity. If the show were really as great as they claim, there would be no need to invent enemies just to defeat them. It also shows how desperate they are for validation. They are not defending the show because it needs defending. They are doing it because they need to feel like they are winning something. They need the illusion of being smarter, louder, or morally superior to someone else. Creating fake hate just so they can knock it down is the weakest kind of self-praise imaginable. On top of that, it poisons the discussion even more. They complain nonstop about how exhausting the hate is, yet they are the ones keeping it alive, feeding it, and spreading it. Then they turn around and act like victims or heroes for dealing with the mess they helped create. That is not bravery. That is attention-seeking. At the end of the day, it exposes the truth they do not want to admit. They are not defending Sword Art Online for the sake of the show. They are defending their own identity, because they have tied their self-worth to it. And when someone feels the need to fake a war just to feel like a hero, that is not strength. That is sad. Sword Art Online fans really need to grow up and see the world as it actually is. Liking a show does not make it untouchable, and criticism is not some personal attack that needs to be fought off. Not everything you enjoy has to be defended like your life depends on it. At some point, you either accept that people will criticize things you like, or you stay stuck arguing in circles forever. Right now, this fanbase has chosen the second option. And until they step back and face reality, nothing is going to change. What are the fans even hoping to accomplish with all these defenses? The haters and critics are not going to listen, and they are not going to change their minds. No one suddenly decides a show is good because they read a long comment or watched a multi-hour rebuttal. All this effort does is keep the argument alive. It does not silence criticism. It does not convert anyone. It just creates more noise and more reasons for people to push back. If the goal is to make the show look secure and respected, this behavior does the exact opposite, and the Sword Art Online fans themselves know this. They know nothing is going to change. They know the critics are not going to disappear and no minds are going to be won. On some level, they understand that all this defending leads nowhere, yet they keep doing it anyway. Not because it works, but because they cannot stop. The defense is not about results. It is about habit, pride, and refusing to let the criticism exist without answering it. Even when they know it is pointless, they still feel the need to speak up, argue, and repeat the same lines all over again. In fact, I will give you $1,000 if you can find me one person who hated Sword Art Online with every fiber of their being. Then they watched a rebuttal video defending it, and suddenly they did a complete 180 and loved the show. That person does not exist. Not one, not anywhere. You cannot argue someone into liking a show they already decided they hate. A defense video does not rewrite taste or erase years of criticism. All it does is preach to people who already agree or annoy people who never will. So go ahead and prove me wrong and earn $1,000. Find that one example. Until then, every defense video just demonstrates how pointless the effort really is. I'm not asking for much. Just one person out of the more than 8 billion people on this planet. Show me undeniable proof that these sword art online defense videos actually worked. One clear example where someone truly hated the show, watched a defense, and completely changed their mind. You cannot do it. Not because you have not looked hard enough, but because it has never happened. These defenses do not convert anyone. They do not persuade critics. They exist only to comfort the people already invested. Until someone can prove otherwise, all this defending is nothing more than noise with no results to show for it. These defenses are just preaching to the choir and adding to the circle jerk. The only people agreeing are the ones who already loved sword art online from the start. Nothing new is being said, and no minds are being changed. It is the same praise being repeated to the same audience over and over again. The haters and the critics do not care enough to watch these videos, and the ones who do are not going to change their minds anyway. All this content does is create an echo chamber where fans reassure each other that they are right. It feels productive, but it accomplishes nothing outside of self-validation. I do not watch sword art online defense videos, and I am sure the vast majority of other critics and haters do not either. Why would we? There's no reason to sit through hours of excuses for a show we already dislike. Nothing in those videos offers a new perspective worth considering. Defense videos are not made for critics. They are made for fans who want reassurance and validation. People who already dislike the series are not lining up to be convinced, and they never were. Expecting otherwise is just wishful thinking, and it only highlights how disconnected these defenses are from reality. If someone has already made up their mind and hates the show, you are not going to convince them to like it just because you defended it. That is not how people work. In fact, the effect is usually the opposite. Constant defending does not soften opinions. It hardens them. At a certain point, the defense stops sounding passionate and starts sounding desperate. It becomes annoying and insufferable to sit through. Instead of making the show look better, it makes the fanbase look unbearable. And when that happens, people do not reconsider the series. They just dislike it even more. That is exactly what happened to me. I did not even hate Sword Art Online when I first watched it. I just thought it was bad. Nothing more than that. I moved on, watched other shows, and did not think about it again. It was not some deep obsession or burning hatred. What actually solidified my dislike of the show was the fanbase. The constant defending, the nonstop excuses, and the refusal to accept even basic criticism turned mild disinterest into genuine frustration. The show itself was easy to forget. The behavior around it was not. Over time, it became impossible to separate the series from the people who would not shut up about protecting it. If it were not for the toxic fanbase, this channel would not exist, and you would not be watching this video right now. That is the irony of the whole situation. The show itself was forgettable enough to move past. The behavior surrounding it was not. All of this content exists because the fans refused to let criticism die. They kept responding, defending, and escalating, turning something minor into something worth talking about. So here we are. This is not the result of hate chasing the series. It is the result of the fanbase keeping the argument alive long after it should have ended. The Sword Art Online fans made this happen. Their arrogance made them think they could shut down criticism, talk over everyone else, and control the narrative. They assumed that repeating defenses long enough would make the problem go away. Instead, they did the opposite. Every response, every rebuttal, and every meltdown just added fuel to it. They thought they were ending the conversation, but all they really did was give it more attention and more reasons to exist. This outcome is not bad luck or misunderstanding. It is the direct result of their own behavior. But the fans will never admit that. It is always the fault of someone else. It is the haters. It is the critics. It is the YouTubers. It is the internet being unfair. Anything except their own behavior. Taking responsibility would mean admitting they played a role in keeping this mess alive. that they escalated things instead of letting them die, that their constant defending made everything worse. And that is something they refuse to face. Blaming others is easier than accepting that they helped create the very situation they complain about. It is like the stories in Greek mythology where someone tries to avoid a prophecy, only to cause it through their own actions. The harder they struggle against it, the more they guarantee it comes true. Their attempts to escape fate are the very thing that seals it. That is exactly what is happening here. By desperately trying to shut down criticism and prove it does not matter, the fans ensure it never goes away. Everything they do to stop the conversation only keeps it alive. The outcome they complain about is the outcome they created themselves. The moral of those stories in Greek mythology is simple and unforgiving. When you refuse to accept reality and try to fight it at all costs, you end up causing the very outcome you are desperate to avoid. Arrogance blinds people into thinking they can outsmart consequences. They never do. That is exactly the mistake these fans keep making. Instead of accepting that criticism exists and letting it fade on its own, they obsess over controlling it. They argue, lecture, and lash out, convinced they are stopping the problem. In reality, they are manufacturing it. Their denial, their ego, and their need to be right are what keep the backlash alive. If they had done nothing, most of the hate and backlash would have disappeared years ago. Their refusal to learn that lesson is why it never will. Sword Art Online fans are not going to change anything. All this noise, all these defenses, all this effort amounts to nothing. Minds are not being changed. Opinions are not being flipped. The reputation of the series stays exactly where it is or goes even more downhill. All they are doing is wasting time and energy yelling into the void. They act like they are fighting some grand battle, but in reality they are just spinning in circles, achieving absolutely nothing. Sword Art Online fans claim they only want to talk about how great the series is, not how bad it is not. That is what they say, at least. They insist they are done with negativity and only care about praise and appreciation. So if that is actually true, then what is the deal with all these response and rebuttal videos defending the show? You do not spend hours reacting to criticism if you are not focused on it. You do not build entire arguments around something you supposedly want to ignore. Their actions give them away. No matter what they claim, the defense always comes first. It is like that episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where Squidward claims he hates Krabby Patties, while clearly loving them the whole time. He says one thing, but his actions say something else entirely. The denial is obvious, and that is what makes it funny. The same thing applies here. Sword Art Online fans say they are done with the hate and want to ignore it. Yet they keep seeking it out, responding to it, and obsessing over it. They pretend they are above the criticism, but they clearly cannot get enough of it. If they truly wanted to move on, they would have done so already. It is the same kind of irony you see in those memes. Ian Yeager swears he hates Titans, then turns into one. Ken Kaneki despises ghouls, then becomes exactly that. Sword Art Online fans say they hate people who defend the show, say defenders are embarrassing and pointless, and then immediately turn into defenders themselves. They become the very thing they claim to look down on without a shred of self-awareness. It is the same situation as in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Anakin Skywalker swore he would destroy the Sith, and in the end, he became one himself. Sword Art Online fans have done the exact same thing. They claim to hate defenders, mock them, bash them, and say defending the show is harmful and pointless. Then, the moment the series gets criticized, they rush in to defend it nonstop. They became the very thing they said was embarrassing, and they did it willingly. It is ironic. Sword Art Online fans could save other people from defending the show, but not themselves. I still get plenty of Sword Art Online fans watching my videos and arguing in the comment sections. They show up every time, ready to debate, explain, and defend. They clearly know exactly where the criticism is and how to find it, but hold on a second. If they are truly ignoring the hate like they claim, then they should not be here at all. They should not be watching these videos. They should not be commenting. The fact that they are here, engaging nonstop, completely undermines the image they try so hard to maintain. In fact, I would bet any amount of money that there are Sword Art Online fans watching this video right now. Not casually watching either. Actively listening, waiting for something to respond to, already forming a rebuttal in their head. They will insist they do not care. They will claim they are above the criticism. Yet they are still here, still watching, still ready to argue. Even when they say they are done with the hate, they never actually leave it behind. It proves how much doubt the fans have in this series. If they truly believed it was that great, they would not feel the need to constantly step in and rescue it from criticism. Confidence does not look like panic. It does not look like rushing to argue every point or explain away every flaw. So what are you people even doing here if you are supposedly ignoring the hate? If you're watching this, clicking on it, and arguing in the comments, then you are not ignoring anything. You are actively seeking it out. You are feeding on it. You cannot claim you are above the hate while spending your free time drowning in it. Showing up here already proves the lie. The pants of Sword Art Online fans should be permanently on fire because the amount of lying is nonstop. They lie to others, they lie to critics, and most of all, they lie to themselves. They rewrite history, twist facts, and pretend reality is something it is not. All to protect a show they claim does not even need protecting. At this point, the dishonesty is so constant, it might as well be their default state. I do not even share or promote my videos anywhere. I do not post them on forums or shove them into fan spaces. That means you had to go out of your way to find them. You searched for this, you clicked on it, you stayed. That is not ignoring the hate. That is chasing it down and then pretending you are above it. You do not stumble into something you are trying to avoid. Your presence alone proves you are lying. When people genuinely trust the quality of something, they let it stand on its own. They do not hover over it, guarding it from every negative opinion. The nonstop defense reveals what they refuse to admit. On some level, they are not fully convinced themselves, and all this noise is an attempt to drown that doubt out. Another reason this behavior is pathetic is that it turns every discussion into a loyalty test. Instead of engaging with ideas, fans feel pressured to prove they are real supporters by jumping in to defend the show. Silence becomes weakness, and agreement becomes mandatory. That kind of mindset has nothing to do with media discussion and everything to do with group validation. There's also the issue of control. By constantly defending the series, fans try to police how it is talked about. They do not just want to enjoy the show. They want to decide which opinions are allowed to exist. Claiming the series does not need defending while actively shutting down criticism is an attempt to dominate the conversation without admitting it. Another problem is that these defenses lower the bar for the show itself. Instead of holding it to any standard, fans rush to excuse flaws before anyone can even finish a thought. Weak writing becomes intentional. Bad pacing becomes misunderstood. Every issue is reframed instead of addressed. In doing this, they quietly admit the show cannot stand up to scrutiny on its own. There is also a lack of self-respect involved. If a show truly mattered to you in a healthy way, you would not feel the need to argue for it endlessly. You would not need to convince strangers that your taste is valid. Constant defense suggests doubt, not confidence, no matter how much they deny it. The contradiction reveals a deeper insecurity. Saying the show does not need defending is a way to sound mature and above the drama. Defending it anyway exposes that image as fake. They want the status of being unbothered without doing the work of actually letting things go. And that gap between what they say and what they do is why the behavior keeps getting called out. And you know what? I bet when I revisit this topic again in the future, there will be even more defenses popping up. It will never stop because the fans are incapable of letting it end. Time will pass, the same arguments will be made, and the same reactions will appear all over again. Nothing will change because the problem is not the criticism. It is the mindset. As long as the fans feel the need to protect the show at all costs, they will keep responding, keep arguing, and keep proving the exact point they want so badly to ignore and deny. In fact, if nobody ever defends Sword Art Online again, I will delete this entire channel without hesitation and you will never hear from me again. There would be no reason for this channel to exist anymore. The moment the fans stop rushing in to justify, excuse, and glorify this series is the moment the conversation dies. No defenders means no spectacle, no outrage, and no endless loop of denial to respond to. After all, what would be the point of continuing to bash the show if the fans finally accepted reality and moved on? If they stopped treating criticism like a personal attack and stopped propping up a deeply flawed show as if it were sacred, there would be nothing left to say. The channel exists because the defenses never stop. The arrogance never stops. The refusal to let criticism exist never stops. So the irony is simple. The fans are the only reason this keeps going. they keep the spotlight on the show. They keep dragging it back into relevance. If they truly believed defending it was pointless, they would stop. And if they ever do stop, this channel goes with them. Until then, they are fueling the very thing they claim to hate. I know Sword Art Online fans well enough to say this with complete confidence. They are not going to stop defending this garbage. Not now, not ever. They are too emotionally invested to walk away, too wrapped up in protecting a show that clearly does not deserve it. That is why I am willing to put my entire channel on the line over it. I am that certain. If they ever actually stopped defending the series, if the excuses and damage control finally dried up, then this channel would have no reason to exist. But that is not going to happen. Their need to defend this show is automatic and compulsive. They cannot help themselves. As long as they keep rushing in to protect it, there will always be material, and I am more than willing to prove that point by staking everything I have on it. You see the problem here? It is a no-win scenario for the fans. If they stay quiet, the criticism continues without resistance, and they hate that loss of control. But if they speak up, they keep the conversation alive and give the criticism even more attention. Either choice leads to the same outcome. Silence lets the dislike exist. Noise keeps it relevant. The only way they could have avoided this was by never turning it into a war in the first place. But that ship sailed a long time ago. At this point, every move they make just reinforces the cycle. Either way, they lose. And let us be real. The fans are not going to simply stay quiet and sit on the sidelines. If they had that level of self-control, none of these defense videos would exist in the first place. Silence was never an option for them. They are too reactive, too invested, and too desperate to have the last word. Every criticism feels like a challenge that has to be answered. So they will keep jumping in, keep arguing, and keep feeding the exact thing they claim to hate. This cycle continues not because they are forced into it, but because they are incapable of stopping themselves. The fans are the ones keeping the hate alive. They are the ones who refuse to stop talking about it. Every time the conversation starts to fade, they drag it back into the spotlight themselves. They resurface old arguments, revive dead criticisms, and act shocked that the backlash still exists. Nothing is being kept alive by critics at this point. The fuel comes from the fanbase. As long as they keep bringing it up, responding to it, and obsessing over it, the hate will never disappear. They are not fighting the fire. They are the ones throwing more wood on it. So it really does not matter to me what Sword Art Online fans do. Either way, they lose. If they stay quiet, the criticism keeps existing without them being able to control it. If they speak up, they keep the conversation alive and make the backlash louder. There is no move they can make that fixes the situation they created. Silence does not erase the criticism, and noise only amplifies it. The outcome is the same regardless. That is why none of this affects me. The cycle keeps spinning, and they are stuck in it no matter what they choose to do. Sword Art Online fans are not going to stop because they cannot stop. To them, not defending the show is like not breathing. It is not a choice or a hobby, it is a reflex. The moment criticism exists, they feel compelled to respond, explain, justify, and rewrite reality. Silence is unbearable to them because silence would mean accepting that the show does not need to be defended. Or worse, that the criticism is valid. Their identity is too wrapped up in the series for them to ever step back. If they stop defending it, they lose their sense of purpose. They lose the role of the misunderstood hero standing against the evil haters. So they keep going, even when it clearly does more harm than good. Every defense keeps the conversation alive. Every rebuttal proves how insecure they really are. That is why this never ends. You cannot expect restraint from people who treat criticism like suffocation. As long as they feel the need to defend the show at all costs, they will keep feeding the very cycle they claim to despise. And they will do it endlessly because stopping would mean facing the truth. And that is something they are clearly incapable of doing. The Sword Art Online fanbase is the worst. Not just loud, but deeply insecure and exhausting to deal with. Every discussion turns into a fight, every criticism turns into a meltdown, and every flaw has to be explained away instead of acknowledged. Nothing is ever allowed to simply be bad or mediocre. Everything must be defended at all costs. And honestly, it makes sense. A bad show tends to attract bad fans. When the writing cannot stand on its own, the audience steps in to compensate for it. The weaker the material, the more aggressive the defense becomes. Instead of developing taste, perspective, or self-awareness, the fanbase doubles down and makes the experience worse for everyone else. At some point, the show and the fans start to reflect each other. Messy, defensive, and allergic to criticism. And that is why the reputation sticks. Not because people are unfair, but because the behavior keeps proving it deserved. It is a perfect match. The fans feed off the flaws of the show, and the show feeds off the behavior of the fans. One reinforces the other in an endless loop. The worse the writing and structure become, the more excuses are needed. And the more excuses the fans make, the more those flaws are ignored or normalized. Instead of pushing the series to be better, the fanbase rewards its weakest elements by defending them blindly. In return, the show never has to improve because it knows someone else will do the work for it. The result is a stagnant mess held together by denial. Neither the series nor the fanbase ever grows because they are too busy protecting each other from reality. The Sword Art Online fanbase just seems miserable. There is no joy in how they talk about the show, only anger and defensiveness. Every interaction feels tense, like everyone is waiting for a fight. Enjoyment takes a backseat to arguing and proving others wrong. I would not join that environment even if you paid me. Constant outrage, constant excuses, constant paranoia about criticism sounds exhausting. If liking a show means spending that much time being bitter and combative, then it is not worth it. At that point, it stops being a fandom and starts looking like a chore. Why is it so hard for these fans to accept that some people are simply not going to like the show? Disliking a piece of media is completely normal. It happens to everything. No show, no matter how popular, is universally loved. That should not be shocking or offensive. There are plenty of people who dislike movies or shows I enjoy, and it does not bother me. I do not feel the need to flood the internet with response videos or argue with strangers to validate my taste. I accept it and move on. The fact that Sword Art Online fans cannot do the same says less about the critics or the haters and far more about their own insecurity. Sword Art Online fans must be deeply insecure about their own taste. There is no other explanation for why disagreement hits them this hard. People who are comfortable with what they like do not react this way. They do not panic or get upset every time someone disagrees. They do not feel the need to correct, lecture, or overwhelm others into submission. This kind of behavior comes from doubt, not confidence. It comes from needing external validation instead of having a stable opinion of your own. And the more the Sword Art Online fans deny that insecurity, the more obvious it becomes through their actions. The hate eats them up alive. They stay awake at night thinking about it, replaying arguments in their heads and planning responses that no one asked for. It lives rent-free in their minds because this show has become their entire world. There is no separation between liking the series and being the series. Hating on it feels like an attack on their identity. It is not just criticism of a piece of media to them. It feels personal, like someone questioning their taste, their time, and the years they spent defending it. That is why the fans cannot let it go. When a show becomes your whole life, any criticism of it feels like an existential threat. And that is exactly why they react the way they do. Sword Art Online fans worship this garbage the way people in ancient Greece worshipped gods like Zeus and Poseidon. Blind devotion, endless praise, and constant excuses for bad behavior. The difference is that even those ancient myths understood something these fans refused to accept. The gods were flawed. Deeply flawed. Petty, cruel, arrogant, indecisive, inconsistent, and full of problems. And that was the point. Sword Art Online fans do not allow that kind of honesty. To them, the show has to be perfect. Every flaw must be rebranded as misunderstood. Every criticism must be dismissed as ignorance. There is no room for imperfection, because admitting flaws would shatter the fantasy they have built around it. At least ancient mythology acknowledged its gods were broken. Its fanbase cannot even admit their show is. Sword Art Online has one of the most delusional fanbases out there. They claim the series is the best, that it is universally loved, and that the backlash is either fake or long gone. They say this with complete confidence, as if repeating it enough times will make it true. The problem is that there is no evidence to support any of it. Popular opinion does not line up with their claims. The reputation of the show speaks for itself, and it is not a positive one. Outside of the niche fan bubble, Sword Art Online is widely criticized, mocked, and dismissed as poorly written. You do not need conspiracy theories or cherry-picked comments to see that. The proof is everywhere. What makes it worse is that the fans refuse to engage with that reality. Instead of acknowledging how the series is actually viewed, they rewrite the narrative to protect their ego. Calling something hated does not make it unfair. Sometimes it just means people saw it clearly. Even in Japan, Sword Art Online is far from universally respected. It has a long-standing reputation as a bad series, and the protagonist has become a punchline rather than a symbol of quality. Instead of being associated with strong writing or good taste, the character is often used as shorthand for shallow power fantasy anime. That alone should tell you something. When a series becomes more recognizable as a meme or a joke than as a well-written story, the praise clearly is not universal. The fans can insist everyone loves it all they want, but the way the series is talked about, both inside and outside its home country, tells a very different story. Sword Art Online is also consistently brought up in discussions about the worst anime of all time, and that is not some random fluke or isolated opinion. It shows up again and again on worst of lists, critical retrospectives, and long-running debates about badly written popular anime. When a series keeps getting singled out years after its release, that is not hate bandwagoning. That is a pattern. What really matters is why it keeps showing up there. People criticize it for shallow characters, lazy writing, forced drama, and wasted concepts. These are not nitpicks. They are fundamental problems that undercut the entire experience. You can ignore one list, but when the same complaints come up across different platforms, from different audiences, and over long periods of time, it becomes impossible to dismiss it all as just haters. And that is what makes the fan response so embarrassing. Instead of asking why the show has such a bad reputation in the first place, they pretend those rankings do not exist or claim they are all biased. At some point, denial stops being loyalty and starts being delusion. A genuinely great series does not need constant damage control to explain away why so many people think it is terrible. Popularity alone does not equal quality, and Sword Art Online is proof of that. Being well known just means more people watched it. It also means more people noticed how bad it was. Sword Art Online is not good, and it never was good. It did not suddenly get misunderstood over time. And it was not ruined by critics. The problems were there from the start. Weak writing, shallow characters, and cheap shortcuts passed off as depth. None of that magically improves with age. What changed is not the show. What changed is that people stopped giving it the benefit of the doubt. Nostalgia wore off, excuses ran out, and the flaws became impossible to ignore. Fans can keep pretending the series was secretly great all along, but repetition does not rewrite reality. A bad show does not become good just because people refuse to let it go. I'm glad I am not a fan of Sword Art Online. I never was, and I never will be. Watching from the outside makes it clear how miserable that position is. Constant defending, constant arguments, and constant obsession with criticism sound exhausting. I get to move on, enjoy other shows, and not tie my identity to propping up something that cannot stand on its own. That freedom alone makes the difference obvious. Being a fan of this series does not look like enjoyment. It looks like a burden. And I would rather have nothing at all than a burden. Sword Art Online fans do not like me, and I do not care. They never liked me to begin with, so nothing has changed. Their opinion was already decided long before any of these videos existed. I did not lose their approval because I never had it. I'm not trying to win them over, impress them, or soften my stance. If anything, their dislike just confirms that I am not catering to the crowd that demands blind praise and endless excuses. Their reaction means nothing, because it was always predictable. And honestly, I do not want or need approval from Sword Art fans. Their approval is not a badge of honor. It comes with expectations to stay quiet, fall in line, and pretend the show is something it is not. Needing approval from that crowd would mean censoring criticism and watering down honest opinions just to keep them comfortable. That is not worth anything. I would rather be disliked for saying what I think than accepted for repeating excuses. Their approval has no value to me and never did. Sword Art Online fans should get mad. Just not at me. If they are going to be angry, they should be angry that the show they keep defending is this flawed to begin with. That frustration has a real source, and it is not critics or haters pointing things out. Instead of directing that anger where it belongs, they aim it outward. They blame reviewers, YouTubers, and anyone who refuses to play along. It is easier to attack messengers than to accept that the problems are baked into the series itself. Admitting that would require honesty. Blaming others lets them stay in denial. Lions do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. And neither do I. Sword Art Online fans can stay mad if they want. Their outrage does not matter to me, and it does not change anything I have said. Anger does not make their arguments stronger, and volume does not turn bad writing into good writing. All it does is expose how personally they take criticism that was never meant for them in the first place. If staying mad is the only response they have left, then that says more about them than it ever will about me. I am not going to stop making these Sword Art Online hate videos no matter how mad the fans get. They can dislike every upload and flood the comments with insults if they want. None of that changes anything. It does not silence criticism, and it does not pressure me into backing down. If anything, that reaction just proves the point and gives me more reason to keep going. The anger, the defensiveness, and the nonstop pushback only confirm that this topic still hits a nerve. As long as they keep responding exactly like this, I will keep making more videos. They are not discouraging me. They are doing the opposite. Sword Art Online fans need to be challenged. They need resistance, criticism, and someone willing to say no when the fanbase spirals into denial. Without pushback, bad behavior goes unchecked and only gets worse. Criticism exists for a reason. When there's no opposition, no one reflects, no one grows, and nothing improves. Blind praise creates stagnation. Pushback forces reality back into the conversation. Without critics and haters, the fanbase would completely lose perspective, because nothing would ever interrupt the echo chamber. That is the role this channel fills. Not punishment, but friction. Not hate for the sake of it, but refusal to let bad arguments and bad behavior go unchallenged. If that makes people uncomfortable, that discomfort says more about them than it does about me. I make videos about how much I hate Sword Art Online and its fanbase. That is it. I am criticizing the show itself and the fans. I am not sitting down to make response or rebuttal videos, trying to debunk individual fans point by point. I am not chasing their arguments or reacting to every defense they put out. The irony is that they do that on their own. They turn my criticism into something bigger by responding to it endlessly. I do not need to hunt them down or call them out directly. They volunteer themselves every time they rush in to defend the show. My focus stays on the series. The fanbase exposes itself without any extra effort from me. Defending the show only makes it look worse. Every excuse highlights another flaw that needed excusing in the first place. Every long explanation draws attention to problems that most people would have forgotten if fans had just stayed quiet. Instead of improving the reputation of Sword Art Online, the non-stop defending puts its weaknesses under a spotlight. It makes the series seem fragile, like it cannot survive a single critical thought without someone rushing in to prop it up. At that point, the defense becomes part of the problem. The more they try to save it, the worse it looks. Sword Art Online fans have nobody to blame but themselves. The backlash, the criticism, the reputation, all of it is a direct result of how they behave. They escalated it. They kept it alive. They turned mild dislike into something much bigger through nonstop defensiveness and arrogance. Of course, they will never admit that. Self-reflection would require honesty, and honesty would mean acknowledging their role in the mess. So instead, they point fingers, shift blame, and pretend this all came from nowhere. It is easier to accuse everyone else than to accept that they helped create the situation they complain about nonstop. Sword Art Online fans need to get off their high horse. They act like they are above criticism, like their taste is more enlightened and everyone else just does not get it. That smug attitude is completely unearned. Liking a show does not make you smarter, deeper, or more correct than anyone else. All that posturing does is make them look insecure. When you constantly have to talk down to critics and frame disagreement as ignorance, it becomes obvious you are trying to protect your ego, not defend good writing. If they dropped the superiority act and accepted that people can dislike what they love, half of this nonsense would disappear overnight. The angrier Sword Art Online fans get, the more I will bash this show. Not out of spite, but because their reactions keep proving the point. Every meltdown, every overreaction, every dramatic response just exposes how fragile the series and its fanbase really are. If they could handle criticism like normal people, this would have ended a long time ago, but they cannot. Their anger turns criticism into fuel. The louder and more unhinged they get, the more obvious it becomes that this show cannot stand on its own. And as long as they keep reacting this way, there will always be more to talk about. I am going to keep dismantling everything Sword Art Online fans treat as sacred. Every untouchable claim, every holy excuse, every insistence that the show is above criticism. Not because it is special, but because none of it holds up under even basic scrutiny. And what are they going to do about it? Defend the show again? Of course they are. The one thing they swear they do not need to do, yet cannot stop themselves from doing. The response is predictable, automatic, and embarrassing. Every defense just proves how fragile their position really is. The defenses will keep coming because they cannot stop themselves. Sword Art Online fans have no restraint and no discipline. Criticism hits and they react on instinct, like a reflex they cannot shut off. They tell everyone to ignore the hate, yet they are the first ones sprinting toward it. They cannot sit quietly. They cannot let a negative opinion exist without trying to smother it. Every new defense is proof of that weakness. If they had even a little self-control, this conversation would have died years ago. Instead, they keep dragging it back into the spotlight, again and again, because letting go would mean admitting they are not as secure as they pretend to be. It would honestly be hilarious if one of the fans made a response or rebuttal video to this video. They would swear up and down that they are not bothered, that the hate does not matter, and that the show does not need defending. And then they would spend an hour proving the exact opposite. Nothing would make the point clearer than that. A rebuttal would not refute anything. It would just be a live demonstration of everything being called out here. If you thought flat earthers were insane, then you clearly have not met the Sword Art Online fanbase yet. At least flat earthers stick to one wrong idea. These fans jump between contradictions without blinking, rewriting reality every time it suits them. One moment the show is perfect and universally loved. The next, it is a poor, misunderstood victim of unfair hate. The mental gymnastics are impressive in the worst way. Watching them argue is less like a discussion and more like watching people argue with facts until the facts give up. How anyone can defend this garbage show is beyond me. There's nothing good about this train wreck. The writing is sloppy, the characters are hollow, and the plot collapses the moment you think about it for more than 5 seconds. You are more likely to find consistency in a bad fanfic than in this series. Every time someone tries to praise it, they end up explaining what they wanted it to be, not what it actually is. At some point, it stops being taste and starts being denial. If you value your sanity, stay far away from Sword Art Online fans. Do not debate them, do not engage with them, and definitely do not expect a rational conversation. It is a complete waste of time and energy. Nothing productive ever comes from it, because they are not interested in discussion, nuance, or differing opinions. They are only interested in winning imaginary battles and protecting a show they have wrapped their entire identity around. Interacting with them is like talking to a wall that screams back at you. No matter how calm or reasonable you are, it always turns into defensiveness, bad faith arguments, and endless goalpost moving. You will explain yourself clearly, and they will either ignore what you said or twist it into something else entirely. Then they will pat themselves on the back for debunking you, even though they never addressed your point in the first place. The worst part is that they thrive on the interaction. Arguing with them only feeds the behavior they claim to hate so much. They complain about criticism, yet actively seek it out so they can feel offended, validated, and important. Engaging with them does not change minds or improve the conversation. It just drags you down into their loop of obsession and insecurity. So the smartest move is simple. Walk away. Let them argue with themselves. Defend against imaginary enemies and keep the hate conversation alive on their own. Your time is better spent doing literally anything else. I am sure I will get a ton of negative comments on this video from the dumb and ignorant Sword Art Online fans, but it does not bother me in the slightest. I do not read comments, so whatever they are typing is just noise into the void. They can rant, complain, and insult all they want, and it will change absolutely nothing. I am not going to give them attention, engagement, or respect because that is exactly what they want. Attention is their fuel. They thrive on feeling acknowledged, argued with, or offended. Denying them that is far more effective than debating them ever could be. They can sit there arguing with a screen, convinced they are accomplishing something, while I move on completely unaffected. At the end of the day, their outrage is meaningless to me. Whether they are mad, offended, or coping in the comments does not matter when no one is listening. They can yell into the comments section all they want. It will not earn them validation, and it will not change my stance. It is honestly baffling that this is the show they chose to devote themselves to. Out of all the movies, anime, and TV shows that exist, with better writing, stronger characters, and actual artistic ambition, this is the hill they decided to die on. It makes you wonder if they have even bothered to look beyond it, because anyone with a halfway decent frame of reference would realize how low the bar is here. There are countless series that explore similar ideas with far more depth and competence, yet Sword Art Online fans act like they discovered the peak of storytelling. That says less about the quality of the show and more about how narrow their tastes are. When someone treats a deeply flawed, shallow series like it is the best thing ever made, it comes across as ignorance rather than passion. What makes it worse is the arrogance that comes with it. They do not just enjoy the show. They elevate it, defend it endlessly, and talk down to anyone who disagrees, as if they are connoisseurs of great media. Meanwhile, they are championing something that many people quickly outgrow once they experience better stories elsewhere. In the end, it feels less like genuine love for a series and more like settling. They latched onto one terrible show early on and never moved forward. And instead of broadening their horizons, they doubled down, built their identity around it, and now feel personally threatened by the existence of better options. The funniest part is that Sword Art Online fans cannot even stand each other. The fanbase is so toxic and hostile that it eats itself alive. You would expect people who love the same show to have some sense of unity, but instead it is nonstop infighting, gatekeeping, and purity tests. They argue over which arc is misunderstood, which criticism is allowed, and which fans are real fans as if any of it matters. The community is completely unwelcoming. New fans get talked down to, casual fans get dismissed, and anyone with even mild criticism gets dogpiled. Even longtime fans turn on each other the moment someone steps out of line. It is a constant competition to see who can defend the show harder, and who can be the loudest about their loyalty. That kind of environment does not come from a healthy fan base. It comes from insecurity. What makes it especially pathetic is that they blame outsiders for the toxicity, when most of the hostility comes from inside the group itself. They are so obsessed with defending the show's reputation that they cannot even coexist with people who supposedly like the same thing. At that point, it is not fandom anymore. It is a pressure cooker. A fanbase that cannot tolerate disagreement within its own ranks is already broken. Sword Art Online fans are not united by love of the series. They are united by paranoia, defensiveness, and the fear that if they stop fighting, everything they built their identity around will collapse. Honestly, even the K-pop community is not as toxic as the Sword Art Online fanbase, and that is saying a lot. K-pop fandoms have a reputation for being intense, defensive, and dramatic, yet they still manage to function better than this mess. At least K-pop fans can acknowledge flaws, move on to other groups, or coexist without constantly tearing each other apart. Sword Art Online fans, on the other hand, seem incapable of that. Everything turns into a fight. Every opinion becomes a threat. Every criticism is treated like a personal attack. The community is so fragile that it cannot survive without constant validation and nonstop defending. Even fandoms known for extreme loyalty and stan behavior manage to look healthier by comparison. What makes this especially embarrassing is that K-pop fans are often mocked for being obsessive. Yet many of them still show more self-awareness and restraint than Sword Art Online fans ever do. They argue, sure, but they also celebrate, joke, and move on. The Sword Art Online fanbase just stews in bitterness and outrage, forever trapped in defense mode. When a fandom built around Korean popular music idols looks calmer and more stable than a fandom built around a single anime, that should be a massive red flag. But instead of reflecting on that, Sword Art Online fans will just get angry and prove the point all over again. The Star Wars community looks tame compared to Sword Art Online fans. And that is almost impressive considering how divided and argumentative Star Wars fans are known to be. They fight over movies, directors, canon, and characters. Yet, even with all that chaos, most of them can still accept one basic reality. Not everyone is going to like the same thing. Sword Art Online fans cannot handle that idea at all. Disagreement is not just disagreement to them, it is an attack. Criticism is treated like heresy. Where Star Wars fans argue and then move on to the next release, Sword Art Online fans stay stuck in the same defensive loop, rehashing the same arguments for years as if the honor of the show is on the line. What really separates the two is scale and obsession. Star Wars is a massive franchise with decades of content, so conflict is inevitable. Sword Art Online is one anime series, yet its fans behave as if the entire internet revolves around it. They are louder, more fragile, and far more relentless than a fandom that is 10 times their size. When even a famously divided community like Star Wars looks calm and reasonable by comparison, that should tell you everything. But instead of taking the hint, Sword Art Online fans will just double down, get angrier, and once again prove exactly why they are viewed the way they are. Even Zack Snyder's supporters are not as blind as Sword Art Online fans, and that comparison really puts things into perspective. Snyder fans are infamous for being defensive, loyal to a fault, and convinced that critics do not get it. Yet even they usually admit that his movies are flawed. They will argue about tone, intent, or studio interference. But most of them still acknowledge that the films are messy, divisive, and not for everyone. Sword Art Online fans do not do that. They skip straight past nuance and land on denial. To them, the show is not just good, it is secretly brilliant, misunderstood, and unfairly targeted by the world. Any criticism is dismissed as ignorance or malice. Any flaw is reframed as depth. Any widespread dislike is waved away as a conspiracy of haters. That is not passion. That is willful blindness. At least Snyder supporters can live in the same reality as everyone else while disagreeing about quality. Sword Art Online fans seem trapped in their own bubble, where the series is flawless and anyone who disagrees is wrong by default. They do not debate. They deflect. They do not reflect. They double down. When a fanbase known for extreme loyalty and defensive behavior still looks more grounded than yours, that is a serious problem. Sword Art Online fans are not just defending something they like. They are refusing to accept reality, and the harder reality pushes back, the more delusional they become. Find me a group worse than Sword Art Online fans. I will wait. You will fail. There is no group like them anywhere. They ruin every talk they touch. They shout down anyone who disagrees. They treat bad writing like holy law and act hurt when people laugh at it. They spam the same tired lines and call it taste. They swear the show is deep while it trips over itself every 5 minutes. They brag, they whine, and they never listen. If a joke lands, they cry. If a flaw shows, they rage. They turn every space into a mess and then blame everyone else. You cannot top this. Sword Art Online fans sit at the bottom, loud and proud, the worst of the worst. It is no wonder why everyone hates Sword Art Online fans. They earn that hate every day. They act loud and smug and never shut up. They jump into every talk just to praise a weak show and trash anyone who disagrees. They turn simple jokes into fights and cry when people do not clap for them. They act like victims while acting rude to everyone else. They flood spaces, ruin the mood, and then blame the world for pushing back. People do not hate them for no reason. People hate them because they make themselves awful to deal with. That is it for now, but do not worry, there's plenty more hate to come. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. This topic clearly is not going anywhere, and based on the reactions it keeps getting, it is only going to keep coming back. As long as people keep proving the point, there will always be more to talk about.